We've discussed in previous videos the importance of the Force ability known as Force Stealth, also known as Force Concealment, in Sidious's success in keeping his Sith identity and allegiance to the dark side of the Force hidden from the Jedi Order. Force Concealment was exactly as it sounds. It allowed a Force user to hide their light or dark alignment to the Force, as well as their connection to the Force in general. Using Force Concealment, Sidious was able to go undetected by the Jedi Order. But Sidious's training with Force Concealment doesn't do justice to the mastery that went into his journey to keeping his true identity secret. In Sidious, this was someone who would fool the most powerful members of the Jedi Order, including High Council members like Yoda and Mace Windu, with no Jedi recognizing that a Dark Lord of the Sith was among them for over 3 decades, able to rise to the position of Supreme Chancellor in plain sight. It was an incredible feat that allowed Sidious's machinations to proceed and conclude with the successful completion of the Sith Grand Plan. In this video, just as we did recently for his lightsaber abilities, I want to explain how Sidious became a master at hiding his Sith identity from the Jedi Order. We'll start by looking at the importance of Sidious's place within the lineage of Darth Bane and Darth Xana, the efforts of his master Darth Plagueis, and Palpatine's natural ability with the Force, all of which would make it impossible for the strongest Jedi to detect the Sith Lord on Coruscant determined to destroy them. Sidious's knowledge of Force Concealment and the importance of developing this Force power was forged through the earliest efforts of Darth Bane and Darth Xana a millennium before his rise, which also serves as a great example of how far the Sith Order came in their efforts to conceal themselves from the Jedi. Sidious was part of an important lineage that began with Bane, as Xana would achieve an early victory against the Jedi in this regard by actually infiltrating the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, going undetected by the Jedi Masters of the Order. In breaching the temple as part of her mission to search the Jedi archives for information on how to free her master Bane from his Orbalisk armor, Xana used a technique different from Force Concealment, but which ultimately led to the same results. Given her skill with Sith sorcery, Xana was able to mask her strength and dark side alignment using an ability known as False Light Side Aura, which projected an aura of light side energy to approximate that which a Jedi would produce. But Xana's abilities in no way guaranteed success. In fact, despite weeks of practice and preparation for the mission and her strength with the Force and sorcery, she wasn't completely confident she could hide her true nature for more than a few hours, experiencing times when she couldn't maintain the necessary concentration to keep up the complicated spell. Ultimately, Xana succeeded, but her example is telling for us here. The first Sith Lords within Bane's New Order, established 1,000 years before Sidious, weren't capable of the feats the Sith would ultimately learn to perform. Sidious was the benefactor of a Sith lineage that recognized the necessity of learning to conceal their true nature from the Jedi in face-to-face confrontations. By the era of Darth Plagueis and his master Darth Tenebrous, the Sith had perfected their ability to hide in plain sight, with Tenebrous and Plagueis both acting in known public personas within the galaxy. Tenebrous as the starship designer Rugus Gnome, and Plagueis the powerful banking clan member Higo Damask. Thus, Sidious would follow in these successes with Force Concealment that started centuries before him, the benefactor of Bane's vision for the Sith to grow powerful in succeeding generations. There's perhaps no more important influence in Sidious becoming a master at hiding his Sith identity from the Jedi than his master Plagueis. In Plagueis, Sidious had a master who took real pride and enjoyment in concealing his true nature from the Jedi himself. As the Darth Plagueis novel reveals, Plagueis sought out opportunities to interact with Jedi face-to-face, rarely ever declining such meetings when he had the chance. If Sidious's 3 decades of hiding in plain sight from the Jedi seems impossible, although Plagueis of course wouldn't have the sheer number of interactions his apprentice did, Plagueis concealed his Sith identity from the Jedi for decades himself, meeting with powerful Jedi such as Dooku, Jocasta Nu, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Sifo Dyas. The Dark Lord would encourage the same mentality in his apprentice Sidious, knowing that if he was going to rise to the position of Supreme Chancellor, he had to learn to embrace such meetings and become powerful in Force Concealment. Therefore, when Palpatine took on the position of Senator for his homeworld of Naboo, 30 years before the outbreak of the Clone War, a position that would require his being on Coruscant, Plagueis set out to train Sidious in the methods of disguising himself and its importance. As one of his apprentice's first actions on Coruscant, Plagueis ordered Sidious to seek out a Jedi and have his first ever one-on-one meeting with a member of their order right away, to test his ability to conceal his true nature from another Force user. This Jedi would ultimately be the Jedi Knight Ron-Har Kim. Plagueis trained and guided Sidious through the process intensely, offering his apprentice a vast amount of wisdom on concealment. For example, Plagueis would provide clear instructions that Sidious should submerge himself within the unified pattern to which the Jedi were attuned to, as this would allow him to be visible in the Force, but not as a Sith. Even more, Sidious had to be certain he was taken for granted by the Jedi, disguised within topics and knowledge that had nothing to do with the Jedi or the Force, as this would camouflage Sidious within a world unconnected to the Sith. It's fascinating to see Plagueis' role in this process. Sidious would ultimately have his first one-on-one meeting with the Jedi Knight Ron Harkim. However, unlike his future encounters seen within the films, it was extremely shaky at times, where one gets the real sense that had Sidious's first encounter been with a master within the Order, he might have been found out. But he was successful, and following Plagueis' additional advice, Sidious would use his earliest weeks on Coruscant to practice and hone his concealment abilities further by acquainting himself with the Jedi Temple and seeking out groups of Jedi to interact among. Just as Plagueis had explained, Sidious was able to hide in plain sight and conceal his true nature from the most powerful Jedi. Therefore, Sidious's actions during the era of the prequel trilogy were the result of decades of practice, where through his Palpatine alter ego, Sidious was a master of Force concealment. Yet Sidious's mastery wouldn't all be the result of the wisdom and opportunities encouraged by Plagueis. There was also a great deal of natural ability on the part of Sidious, developed early in his life while still on Naboo, and the combination of Plagueis' efforts and this innate ability would result in Sidious becoming one of the most powerful users of Force concealment in the history of the Sith and Jedi. When Plagueis first met Palpatine on Naboo, when the latter was 17 years old, Plagueis was intent on studying him through the Force. However, when the Dark Lord reached out to obtain whatever information he could, an action that should have been relatively easy, Plagueis wasn't able to learn much at all. At first, Plagueis concluded this was merely due to Palpatine's mind being consumed by conflict, as well as the general sense that humans were uniquely difficult to read at times. However, when Plagueis learned more about Palpatine, sensing he might be someone he could mold to play a greater role within the galactic political realm, Plagueis would again reach out with the Force to see deeper into Palpatine's nature. And again, the Dark Lord was thwarted. This second failure would prompt Plagueis to conclude that Palpatine may have developed the ability to confine and restrict the visibility of the Force within himself by raising psychic walls that were impenetrable by even a Sith Lord. As even Plagueis recognized, this would have been an extremely rare trait and left him needing to know a single answer. Did Palpatine have the Force? This question would soon be answered after Palpatine had murdered his entire family and explained the details to Plagueis. At this point, Plagueis was able to sense Palpatine's true nature for the first time, leaving the Sith Lord in genuine astonishment. Plagueis concluded the fury and rage that consumed Palpatine had finally brought down the walls he had learned to raise since he was a child to safeguard his secret abilities with the Force. It was at this point that Plagueis would then welcome Palpatine into the Order of the Sith Lords, bestowing upon him the name Darth Sidious. But the importance of this scene from the Darth Plagueis novel is clear. Even before he received any training, Sidious was capable of hiding his raw anger and even his connection to the Force from a powerful Sith Lord like Darth Plagueis. As Plagueis would discover on Naboo, Sidious was a natural at Force concealment. And while the Dark Lord would have to rebuild the walls that would keep Sidious from being discovered by the Jedi as his power with the dark side grew over the first decade of his training, Plagueis had an apprentice who had all the tools to become uniquely powerful at hiding in plain sight from the Jedi and covering his true nature. As a final important point, Sidious would also eventually realize, once he traveled to Coruscant for the first time, that the presence of so many Jedi and the Jedi Temple itself would not be a catalyst for revealing the true extent of his power with the dark side. Because the population of Coruscant was so great at roughly 1 trillion and was a planet of such grandiosity and absent of practically anything considered natural, the planet wasn't as strong in the light in the same way that a planet like Korriban was strong in the dark side. I think this is important because it allowed Sidious to more easily submerge himself within the profane of the world's politics, not standing out as a void of darkness within a sea of light. Even more, as Plagueis described, with the Jedi Temple being so strong in the light side of the Force, it was designed to hold the dark at bay, not easily detecting the dark side within the walls of the Jedi Temple itself, and helping Sidious to blend in despite his power with the dark side of the Force. Therefore, benefiting from knowledge passed down from Sith Lord to Sith Lord, his tutelage under Darth Plagueis, his inherent natural abilities with Force concealment, and the unique qualities of Coruscant itself, all of this helped to ensure that Sidious became a master at hiding a Sith identity from the Jedi Order, able to carry out the Sith Grand Plan while going undetected by the most powerful Jedi Masters. So there we have it, how Sidious was able to hide his true nature from the Jedi for over 30 years. Thank you very much to all of the Patreon members of Star Wars Reading Club, as your support is so greatly appreciated. You can find all of our social media links and a link to our Star Wars gaming channel in the description below, for updates and even more Star Wars content. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions. Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. If not for me, for friendship.